next speakers this morning, Toby, Stewart and Duncan Booth from Macquarie Bank, who are going to give us an update on fraud awareness. Some of you may remember we started this last year and we ran out of time. So this is a catch-up on that and a continuation of it. So I'd just like to introduce the two boys. So Toby's been working at Macquarie Bank now for around 9 years, working in roles ranging from mailroom, back office operations, helping identify and develop fraud prevention strategies and protocols, dealing with complaints and internal dispute resolution as well. Most recently, he's been working as a training and relationship manager across Macquarie's wealth products, the cash management account, Macquarie Wrap and Macquarie Online Trading. Duncan, on the other hand, is a business development manager with Macquarie Bank. His role is to partner with firms to grow and develop their business, to provide a better client experience and advice to more people. Originally from country Tasmania, where his parents were the local GP, he's been with Macquarie for over 10 years now in Brisbane. I believe Duncan's going first. Please join me in welcoming Duncan.
Thanks, Steve and Olivia, and I like to get the Tasmania thing out there in case anyone wants to make any jokes later on, and know that they'll offend me, and Liv can't speak too much being where she's from. But as Steve said, we want to rebuild and recap a little bit on last time, and as much as I know you like hearing from us, we've also got some videos today to explain a few of the things more eloquently and with a bit of a laugh than we can. So we'll start with one of those, but what we really want you to take away from today is that Steve, Olivia and the Aspire Retire team, Macquarie, are here to protect your money and your investments, and key to us is to make sure that the people we're dealing with are you. And what we want you to learn today is that, you know, at the end of the day, speaking to you as a bank and speaking to you as a business is the best way to make sure that we're dealing with the right people. And we want you to take this away and spread the word, whether it's friends, whether it's family. Educate people as best you can, because the best form of defence is knowledge and knowing what's out there. So I'll hand over to our friends from London to start us off.
Hi, Mrs. Walker?
Yes?
Hi, Mrs. Walker. I'm from your bank. It seems there's been some unusual activity in your account.
Really?
Don't you worry about it, Mrs. Walker. We'll soon sort that out for you. Before we continue, I just want to go through some security questions with you.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, can you please tell me your password?
Normally you only ask for 2 digits.
But due to the nature of the circumstances, I'm afraid we're going to have to go with a slightly higher security clearance.
Oh, yes, of course, sorry. 723-327.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put you on hold for a little moment, and we'll get this all sorted out for you. Is that okay?
Oh, yes, it's fine.
Right. Hello, Mrs. Walker.
Yes?
That's all sorted out for you. You have a good day, Mrs. Walker.
Actually, can I just ask you... You wouldn't give your information to a stranger. Don't do it over the phone. For advice and guidance on keeping your details safe, visit Action for...
We may all laugh at that. Toby and I have both worked in the Macquarie Contact Centre, where we take the calls from financial planners, accountants and our end clients, and we can all laugh at that, but the sad truth, and Toby and I have spoken to both clients and planners on the end of it, is that does happen. You know, not exactly at a park bench like that, but there are cases, and unfortunately there's far too many of them for us to recount. But it might seem simple, but just make sure, you know, who you're speaking to is who you think it is. I want to give you all a big round of applause, because I think most of you are probably from Queensland. Queensland is the fraud capital of Australia. We not only have won, 12 of the last 13 state of origins, but we also have the highest percentage of fraud occur in this state. There's a lot of stats that go around. This has been backed up by our own data as well. And the cases we'll show you today, we want to actually highlight real things that have happened. So it's all well and good to make up stories and use our imagination. Unfortunately, the simple stories and the truth are what resonate most with you. We're going to not touch on all of these today, but what we will give you are some resources to go away and dive deeper into each of them. We're going to focus on the ones that we think are most relevant right now. There's a lot of technology that we've invested to help to try and prevent this, but ultimately it comes down to the people in the room, the people on the phone and the people at Macquarie that help make this not happen more frequently. So I'll hand over to Toby to give the first example of something that you might not have heard of, but might be something to keep in mind as we move into a mobile and technology age.
Yeah, so as you can see, you probably saw up on the previous screen, phone porting, and now highlighted here. Some of you may have heard this before. I believe we did include it briefly in the presentation last year for those who came along there as well. And as you'd all be aware, mobile phones now do form a big part of security for online banking, as well as various other providers as MyGov websites, the ATO. In terms of primarily sending you a text message, you probably know the drill. Do a particular transaction, log into a website to set a password, and it will send a text message to your mobile number with a secure code. You then put the secure code back into the online portal, and away you go. You've got full access to your finances or whatever it may be. The only issue with phone porting yet is some of the telcos, they're not quite up at the same level of security when it comes to protecting information as we are at the banks. And it's actually surprisingly easy for someone to change your number between service providers. I actually did it recently myself. And it actually led to a pretty, humorous for us, but not so humorous for a telecommunications individual whose phone number was ported. So basically, for those who aren't aware of what phone porting is, you can go to a new service provider for your mobile, provide your mobile number, your name, date of birth, possibly residential address if they ask for it, and the new service provider will bring your number over to them. Makes it really, really nice and simple for genuine people who want to change their number over. It also makes it really simple for fraudsters to try and steal your number. And then once they've got that, if they've got some other basic information, it unfortunately does make it quite easy for them to log into secure accounts or use your phone number to contact other people and portray a fraud through there. So what we've got here is an example of where someone had actually stolen the phone number of a person who, the man who's been texting on the right, trusts, and saying, hey, who do you bank with? NAB or Westpac? Westpac, why? I need you to be a reference. He then got details. He knew then that the victim banked with Westpac. He actually had access to his mobile number already and just went onto the Westpac website, reset password, triggered the text message to himself, and away he went and drained that person's bank account. So mobile numbers are no longer as secure, still fairly secure, but no longer as secure as what they once used to be. So we're doing some work at the moment actually on trying to take that to a next level. For those of you in the room that use a smartphone, something like an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy, we're actually in the process of developing an application that's going to do two things. One, it's actually going to make the authorization process for you much more secure, but it's actually going to make it easier as well from a user experience point of view. So unfortunately, I don't have any screenshots for you. You'll have to use your imaginations. It's actually in beta testing with staff like Duncan and I at the moment. And what it does is it's an app on your phone. It can't be ported like your phone number. No one can steal it. So if ever you're going onto your internet banking with a Macquarie once it's launched, instead of us triggering a text message to you, it's actually just going to trigger a push notification to your phone where you log into the app with a secure method, so either your thumbprint or your face and Face ID, and you authorize the transaction in the app itself, separate to your Macquarie banking app or separate to your computer. And that's actually a much more secure method, because if someone steals your phone without your thumbprint or without your face in front of the phone, they can't actually get into it. It doesn't matter if they've ported your number, they're not going to be able to authorize a transaction. And from a user experience point of view, rather than you needing to get a PIN number and then go back to your computer or back to what it was, whatever device you're doing your banking on, you actually just accept it in the app and it automatically flows through straight away. So we're really trying to get ahead of the game in terms of fraud and how that's perpetrating on mobile. So there's a couple of other things. I did mention these last time, but they're still just as prevalent. Phishing and malware. So what that relates to, so phishing would be something like this on the right-hand side. This here is actually a mock-up, a fake version of the ATO website. So looks reasonably legitimate. It's much better than anything I could ever put together. And basically, each one of those links to a bank is a false link. Looks very legitimate, looks real when you go to the link. It looks exactly the same as what your bank login might look like. Except when you go to that page and you put in your details, you're actually giving your online login information to a fraudulent party. The one on the left-hand side here is something we're seeing a bit more of, and it's actually called malware. So it'll start with notices like a speeding fine, but typically they seem to come from the Australian Federal Police, which is a bit odd because they don't issue speeding fines. ATO debts, State Recovery Debt Office, or another one that I've seen and heard a bit of lately is that there's a warrant out for your arrest, which kind of prompts a bit more of a fight or flight reaction and a bit more concern than a small debt. What happens actually though when you click on that Act Now box is it downloads malicious software onto your computer. So it's a different form of getting all your information, and that software will actually be tracking everything you do and sending a report back to the fraudster, which might contain information such as login details, communications with third parties. So they come in various forms. There's another one from Australia Post. There's a couple of different ways that you can kind of identify or try and identify if these are legitimate or not. The first way that I suggest is looking at the actual email address. So you can see at the top of the screen there, they've made it look like it's coming from Australia Post Track. But if you have a look at the email address, it is a little different. Now, I don't know the Australia Post email address off the top of my head, nor of any other providers like PayPal, but it is a good way to actually check the email address it's coming from. And I guess if in doubt, just don't click on anything that you don't know is legitimate. Another one, this actually happened to a friend of mine, a bit more severe and nasty. This one's called ransomware. So similar to the malware where you click on a link in an email, it too will generate through the same method. But what this one does, instead of just secretly watching you, it actually goes through your computer and locks every single file you have on your computer. Not so much of an issue on a personal computer, depending on what you use that for. A big issue though for any businesses or business owners. It's actually affected a friend of mine who owns a small business. Basically, went through his whole system, locked every single file, and then receives a message saying, "We'll unlock this for you if you send us X number of Bitcoin." In his case, they were demanding $10,000. He actually ended up paying it because he needed access to his files. He had no backup. And so between the lost productivity in his office and the amount he paid, it was a cost close to $40,000 in the end. So this one's a real nasty one and something to keep aware of. And I'll just hand back over to Dunk to cap up on some of the scams we're seeing.
And it's important to remember with those ones that, you think about our personal lives. I think about the close to 8,000 family photos I have on my computer at home of my kids and my family. If you put an emotional dollar value to those, how much would you be prepared to pay to get your family memories back if you hadn't backed them up? So it's something that I always like to think of, even at a personal level, is how can I go about making sure that I'm protected there? And the easiest way is to not click. Email account compromise is one we probably wanted to focus on today, and Tobes, feel free to jump in with any of your real-life examples. I won't get people to raise their hands, but I imagine a lot of you have a Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo account, one of the many, many domains out there. The ability for hackers, if they want to gain access to that is rather easy, and the harder you make your password, the better. But what tends to happen, and what we see more and more, especially as we deal with intermediaries and deal with a number of people in the process of making a transaction, is that fraudsters typically sit on an email address they've got access to for a number of months, if not years. And if you think about it this way, if I was to go and look at any one of your emails now for the last 18 months, how much of a profile on you could I build up? How much information could I gather on you based on what is in your email? And not just with professionals, but with your family, with your friends. We've had cases of home break-ins now where they're breaking in not just to take your TV, because TV is getting so big you can't really carry them out of the room, but they're breaking in to look for your, as my wife and I call it, our important documents box, which gets cleaned up about once a year. And they're going to find that to find things like your passport number, your driver's license number, rates notice, so they can take a picture of it to use in case they need something JP'd. So they're trying to gain as much information as they can and accumulate that data slowly so that they can then use that at a later stage, either through a third party, such as a lawyer or someone you deal with, or either just directly to a provider. And a real life scenario for you is I had a plumber out last week. I got sent an invoice yesterday for that. My first point of call wasn't to pay the bill. It was to call the plumbing company and ask if they'd sent that invoice to me and that they needed to confirm the bank details to me. Because we've had cases where an invoice gets sent, 30 seconds later another email gets sent to say, oh, sorry, by the way, we had the wrong attachment to that first one. Here's the correct details. Let us know if you have any issues. First email is genuine. Second email is from someone that's been sitting on the account. We had a client last year who had a $12,000 holiday that they paid for that they hadn't actually paid to Flight Centre, and it wasn't until shortly before the holiday that this had happened. I also like to dob in my mum at this stage. You'd think with me running my family through this presentation and talking about the values of protecting yourself, that she'd be the best fraud advocate for me. She is, but by me using her as a real life example here. So her email was taken over without her knowing 2 years ago. She runs an Airbnb place in Tassie. What happened to her was that someone was reading, responding, then deleting all the emails from people who were looking to book the place. Mum is one of these people that rather than do everything through Airbnb or PayPal, she'll do it through email and giving out her bank details, the friendly local way that she's always done it. What ended up happening was for one particular week, she had 7 people booked into the place without her realising. And it wasn't until the week before when a couple of people queried what they were going to do the next week that she started to become suspicious of what was happening. The sad part was that it wasn't a lot of money the people lost. The fact was that 6 of those 7 people now couldn't stay in the place, and one of the 7 people my mum couldn't get in contact with landed in Tasmania, turned up to the house only to be told you have to go somewhere else. So it's not just the dollar value of it, it's everything associated with that. And then for my mum, the feeling of letting people down, and this is what comes up a lot in fraud, is that feeling and that guilt of not telling anyone. I didn't find out for close to a year that this had happened. I've since learnt that mum still does everything via email, much to my own dismay. But the password's not just coffee1 now, it's coffee1 with a capital C. So she's slowly learning there. Does everyone know what the number 1 common password is out there? Yep, closely followed, I think, by ABC123. It's not too hard. Mobile technology and things being done more and more. We had the inflection point in late 2017 where more banking in Australia is done through a mobile device than online through a computer. So, you can look at that 2 ways. We look at it from a security point of view to see it, as a much, much safer way of doing things, let alone your fingerprint. Toby mentioned the Face ID about it there. So importantly, what can you do to help yourselves and to help your family? We call it the red flags. It's really just something that triggers a thought in the back of your head that something's not quite right. It might be the sick feeling in the bottom of your stomach. Some of them are really obvious. Look out for the terminology that's not quite right. Is it normal behaviour? Is it the kind of thing that you'd expect? If in doubt, as Toby said, don't click on it, don't read it, make a call. What's more embarrassing, calling your plumber to ask if they actually sent you an invoice, or losing a few $100 and then having to try and get that back or explain it to your partner why you're not going to go for dinner this weekend. Think about it, that the 30 seconds you make, or the 30 seconds that Liv and Steve and their team make to call you and confirm something, to make sure it was you that sent an email or text to them, is that more inconvenient, or is it more inconvenient to have to try and get a lot of money back from an overseas address that you're probably never going to get it back from? So just think of those easy things that you can do, and take the message out to your team there. The email vigilance there, there's plenty of examples we can share on that. We've even had it, if you run a small business, as I said, call your provider. We had a financial service and accounting firm who had a new printer installed in the office. Invoice was left there. Again, another invoice was sent later that day with here's the correct details, away you go. But think of the things you do around the house, the things that you have to pay and what that might mean, and how you can verify that information. Toby, is there any examples you want to share of email account takeover or loss?
Not email account takeover, but one of the ones that was pretty common, but not so much anymore, was Telstra calling my mum and telling her that there was an issue with the internet. I'm not sure if anyone else has received this calls. I'm getting a few nods. It was very, very prevalent. And what they do is tell you that there's an issue with your internet, and they need you to get on your computer, otherwise your internet is going to drop out. Mum happened to receive this call while I was at the house, so I thought I'd have a bit of fun and play along with it for a while. They insisted that my internet wasn't working, even though I had Netflix up and running and I was watching something on there. And what they try and do is basically, it's a similar type of method to some of the emails. Basically, they get you to log in, go onto your computer, log into a website that they provide you. They'll send you an email that looks like it's from Telstra and talk you through it. And in that moment, what they're doing is getting access to your computer. So that's one of the real life examples that's been attempted. What we've got up here, though, is an example of email account compromise, and this is a kind of thing that we see pretty much on a daily basis, actually. Now, our withdrawals team at Macquarie would actually encounter on a daily basis. The advisor in this scenario, it wasn't Aspire Retire. The advisor in this scenario was aware of the increase in email fraud that had been going on. They received this email here asking for a funds transfer. Now, the language has gotten much better than what it used to be in these fraudulent examples, but there's still a few things that aren't grammatically correct. So in the next slide, you'll see the advisor thought to ask the question from the fraudster in the email. Hi, with all the scamming going on lately, I just wanted to check that the request below is genuine. Can you please confirm? So the fraudster, hi. Yes, it is genuine. Prepare an instruction and send it to me for confirmation. Regards. The advisor in that scenario took that as 100% confirmation that this was legit and proceeded to try and put the withdrawal request through Macquarie. Now, luckily, we contacted the advisor regarding the request. One of the things that we may do in that conversation is ask, how did you receive the transaction or the request from your client? Have you verbally confirmed any of these details with the client or the person who sent you the request? And if the answer is no, we are very going to strongly push to verbally confirm them, either directly or via the advisor as well. And it's a good thing we did in this case, because the advisor called the client, found out that they hadn't been talking with the client via email, and that saved $38,000 going out the door. So, as we touched on before, there's just a few things to protect yourselves. Check the websites are secure. You can look for a little digital lock icon, usually in the URL bar. Just check that, one, you're not using, or when you are using internet while traveling, make sure that if you're using a Wi-Fi hotspot, that it is a genuine Wi-Fi hotspot for the place you're at, Starbucks, for example, or an airport. And as we've said all throughout, if you're unsure, don't click or ask the question. But on a lighter note, we thought we'd leave you with a bit of a video. I did show this one last year, but for those who didn't see it, Just a bit of a video that highlights how much information is available on you out there through social media these days.
Toby and I might have to act it out here. That's... Damn.
Oh, hi, can I help?
Hot chocolate.
What's the name?
Joelle.
What was the name?
Alex.
Alex. There you go, Johnny.
Cheers.
If you like our Facebook page, we give you a free hot drink and a free pastry.
We have a new like for Damien. We have a new like for Damien. Hey, Carly, are you standing by?
Standing by. Hi there, can I help?
Yeah, I just liked your Facebook page.
Okay, I'll search Facebook now.
I'm searching Google.
Have a phone number.
I've got his email address.
Okay, Carly, are you ready for information on Damien?
Yep, I am.
Mother's maiden name is he banks with
Carly, this is the girl coming in now with the blue scarf.
What's the name? Nicholas.
Nicola. His date of birth, 7th May. She lives at 38A.
Just be a couple of seconds.
2 children at age 4 and 6. Previous address. She's got the postcode.
Yep, got it. Damien, age 26 and a fitness instructor.
How do you know what that?
Brody, who goes to UCL. Martin, who went to South Thames College. Assistant psychologist at Great Ormond Street. How did you know?
That is... I don't understand.
Oh, better.
You know I'm a Christian as well.
Oh, yeah, we know everything about you, Martin. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Anna from Russia.
We've got a whole library of those, and I'll share them with the Aspire team so that if anyone wants to view more of those, there is a great one where they get so much detail on a person, they put a prosthetic on and then go and live the life of the person for a day without any of their friends or family realising that it's not them, and they then purchase a grand piano. But we'll share that. You know, I think those videos are really powerful, not just for you, but for your children, your friends, family. Share them as much as you can. I say don't click on links, but you know you can trust the ones we send out. The government do have some great resources out there. Macquarie also have a fraud awareness page, and we continually update that with relevant stories across the bank for us. More than happy to take questions now. Otherwise, feel free to come up to us at a later stage. I'll leave that up to the time masters.
Does anyone have any questions? Yep.
I'm not sure if it's one you can answer straight off the top of your head.
I'll try.
Just wondering your opinion of transferring of funds using your mobile phone these days. Transferring to another person's phone. Bank.
Yeah. Hopefully you can hear me, but Liv's got the... I can probably only give my personal opinion here, but talk to the security a little bit of what you're doing when you are transferring from a mobile device. So, speaking from a Macquarie point of view, but I do bank with maybe a couple of other providers. The security around what they're doing there is probably the most secure form of transferring. If we think about everything from signing a request and posting it, faxing it, emailing it through to 2 or 3 factor authentication. I'm guessing a few of you do like to travel here in the office, it's been told to us, but the level of security that's going to be available not just to when you're here at home, but travelling is only going to get better. Toby mentioned the fact that you will be able to authorise payments through a third factor without having to use mobile, without having to get a text message or make a call. The security of that, the fact that you can use your fingerprint, your PIN, to make a transaction on your phone, I think makes it almost the most secure. There's always ways, to get around it, but my view is that the mobile device is the most secure way to do it. And if we look at where money attempts to leave Macquarie, through the mobile device is the lowest form where we see attempted frauds.
And I might add a little bit to that. One of the reasons I agree with Duncan, I think a mobile is actually more secure. Well, one of the reasons being that if you've got the banking app, whether it's Macquarie, whether it's Commonwealth Bank, ANZ, whoever you bank with, if you've got the banking app on your phone and you're doing your banking through that, you know for certain that you're logging into the legitimate bank, whereas there's always, I guess, a chance, especially if you're traveling, when you're using your computer, there's just a higher chance of actually accidentally logging into a false version of the website through an internet browser, or someone who's compromised your Wi-Fi and is watching what you're doing. So for that purpose, again, just personal opinion, I see mobile banking as being much more secure.
It had to be at the back of the room.
Hi, how you going?
Good, thanks.
With the scamsters, like in the ransomware, does the money they pay come from their bank here in Australia? Like with that $10,000 ransom?
Yep.
And how do they get the money, the fraudsters? Does the bank send it to an account overseas, or what?
So the... I heard that. Oh, there we go. That works. There's an on button. So it was via Bitcoin. So they requested that my friend transfer them. It was around $10,000 in Bitcoin. So when this was all happening, he actually put a message out, because he didn't own any Bitcoin. He actually put a message out on social media saying, who do I know that owns Bitcoin? Because I have a bit of a problem here that I need to resolve. So he actually ended up buying $10,000 worth of Bitcoin and transferring it through Bitcoin rather than through his bank.
Oh, okay, so the authorities can't trace that or get
They
to
can't.
it?
That's one of the, I guess, advantages for the criminals. Disadvantages for us is you can't trace where it's gone. So it was overseas. I have heard that for anyone, if you do come across this ransomware, that the customer service is actually pretty good, and once you do pay, they'll help make sure your files are unlocked. But it's not something you want to get caught up in the first place.
Okay, good.
I think that's our note to go.
So I just wanted to thank both Duncan and Toby for coming. After last year's presentation, there was an overwhelming response from clients to get them back again to talk more about fraud. So I'd like to give you a little gift, and I'm just going to end with a couple of things on fraud, because I do watch Scam Watch quite closely in terms of some of the things that happen. 50%, and I guess this is Duncan saying, spread the word about fraud and what to look out for, because 50% of people over the age of 50 are those who are being targeted. So of all the losses, 50% over the age of 55. So if you have loved ones, friends, colleagues, parents, talk to them about this. It's really important. They are the most vulnerable. Surprisingly, men report the most dollar losses when it comes to fraud. So women actually report the most number of reports of someone trying to commit fraud to them, but it's the men who actually lose the most. So I thought that was really interesting. Last year, Scam Watch actually reported was the biggest record-breaking amount of losses here in Australia. So it's certainly an issue. 85% telephone, email and text. And I don't know whether people are actually looking when they go to shop now, but I went into Woolworths the other day, and on their cash register, they actually have a warning. If you're buying iTunes vouchers, there's actually a scam alert, because a lot of the alerts are actually not only Bitcoin and various other different things, but iTunes vouchers is how they're asking for payment as well. So they've now, I don't know whether it's just because I'm aware of what's going on that I've noticed it, but they actually have it on the registers as well. Dating romance scams have now hit number 2 in Australia. So again, if you've got loved ones who are in relationships, maybe over the internet, overseas, please make them aware. So I think the most important thing, we've asked Macquarie to come along because it was so popular last year. We love their security that they have within the bank. And you will notice that we will call you and verifying transactions, because protecting your wealth is certainly our priority. So thank you guys. We really appreciate you coming back for a second year.
Yeah, I might just reiterate that point that Olivia made. We've had to adjust our internal policies and procedures around increasing the security of things and just verifying the requests are coming from you. So our guys will always get on the phone to talk to you about that. So just so you have that sort of peace of mind that we're behind you as well. And the other point I wanted to make was, because of the the pace of the advancement of technology at the moment, and it's just going to get quicker and quicker. The amount of changes that you're being asked to do in the way you're transacting or interacting with your financial institutions, as an example, it pays just to ask the question, just to satisfy your own peace of mind that is this the right thing, rather than being taken for a ride.